Smart KPIs general definition. So in the previous lecture, we talked about SMART goals. Now let's see how we can apply this methodology to KPIs. So just as a reminder, we had the following 5 rules for the goals. So it had to be specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time related. So what does it mean for the KPIs? So first of all, the specific would mean that it's for a specific area. It's well defined, preferably by some formula. We know how to calculate it, and we know what's the source of information, what are the units and dimension of KPIs. So that would be specific. Measurable, it's about how we measure it. Preferably, it is a quantifiable KPI that you can actually describe using a mathematical formula. Assignable would mean in this case that there is somebody responsible for delivering the results that the KPIs describes, and this team can impact the level of KPI. So they have the money, resources, and the power to influence that. The R we can understand in 2 ways. So it can be realistic, it can be delivered. So we don't want to put goals defined through KPIs in such a level that it cannot be achieved. And relevant would mean in this case that it's linked to the main goals of business. And finally, time related would mean in this case that we define for which period the KPI is calculated and when it has to be calculated, by which date, and by which date you have to deliver the results described by the KPI. So that's in short. Let's move on to an example that will show you how does it look in practice when it comes to applying the SMART rule to KPIs. SMART KPIs example. Now we'll have a look at how we can put the SMART methodology, SMART rules to practice using an example of one KPI from a SaaS business model. So let's have a look at the churn rate. And as we said, we've got the SMART rule. So it has to be specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and relevant, and time related. So let's see what each and every definition means for the specific churn rate. So for specific, it would be defining from where we would get the data, how it is calculated, etc. So first of all, we say that the churn rate is on revenues. It is calculated using barometrics, that is doing the analysis using our financial data at the end of every month. We also say that it is calculated in the percentage in reference to the revenues from previous period. And obviously it is in percentage. Measurable would be the definition. So here we've got the net revenue change to net revenue from previous period. So you have revenue loss due to the loss of customers, but you also have the new and also upgrades. Then assignable would be to whom it is assigned, so who is responsible for shaping this KPI. So in our case, it would be the growth team that is responsible not only for acquisition, but also for retention. And realistic relevant would be whether it's linked to the goal. And the answer is obviously yes, because the goal is the EBITDA, and that heavily depends on the churn rate. So if we manage to minimize the churn rate or even make it negative, then actually the EBITDA will be bigger. And finally, we've got time related. So we say that the churn rate can be calculated automatically on a daily basis. Obviously, you want to have a look at this at least on a weekly basis. So as you can see, we at the beginning had a very general churn rate KPI. And then through the SMART rule, we managed to make it more specific, more actionable. That is why it is so important to apply this rule to each and every KPI.